Thank you so much for coming out today. Thank you for coming out, and every single one of you for showing your support. And to say, on a day like today, no more. No more cruelty, no more deaths, no more live export. Thank you to the previous speakers. Thank you for all your good work on behalf of animals and the singers. Thanks for being inspired. You've heard a lot today, so I'm going to keep it pretty short. I'm going to talk about two things, two subjects today. First, I'm going to talk about why people don't support live export, why most people don't support live export. And the second thing I'm going to explain is how we together are going to end it. Of course, the big problem with live export of animals is that it's cruel and immoral, but this is far from being the only problem. We degrade our own environment to breed these animals. We cut down the forests, we trample the grasses, we use enormous amounts of water, we lose the soil, we generally behave as if we want our country to be a desert. Shockingly, 92% of all land degradation in Australia is due to farming animals. Then we send these poor animals on long sea voyages where thousands die every year, where they have to live caked in their own faeces. The water they drink and the food they eat is mixed in with their own muck. Very often they take animals from Victoria or Tasmania in our winter and send them to Middle East in summer. Is it any wonder so many of the animals die in these hellish conditions? The industry sometimes says it's not that bad, not all the time. Not all the time. Well, Peter Australia have offered to pay for cameras on board these ships and these offshore abattoirs so we can see the conditions, so we can see how good they are. And guess what? The industry refused. Then these poor animals, they arrive on foreign shores and often they are finished. What does this polite term mean, finished? Finishing means fattening up for slaughter. Often this will use roughage or grains, and it really doesn't matter too much what it is. The key point is that land used to grow that grain and that food could just as well be used to grow food for people. Typically, for every 6 kilograms of food fed to a cow, it'll gain a kilogram of weight. Waste. Every day in the world, we feed the grain that could feed 8.7 billion people, that's billion with a B, to cattle. Waste, which could otherwise feed the poor. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization says this practice is callously indifferent to the undernourished people in the world, whose sustenance depends on the same basics as the food fed to factory animals. So much for concern for the poor. What about the rich in these countries? They get to eat beef. They get to join developed countries in suffering from an epidemic of heart disease, cancer, strokes, diabetes, Alzheimer's, kidney and liver disease. Well, that's just great. What about the carbon emissions from this industry, from the live export industry? The companies who do it, despite this industry being one of the biggest contributors to greenhouse emissions in the world, don't pay the carbon tax. They're exempt. A recent PETA study showed they should be paying $40 million a year in carbon taxes. Exempt. Instead, the industry was offered $100 million of taxpayers' funds to prop it up, and then another $10 million, and then another $5 million of your money, your taxes. And our government just keeps on subsidising this cruel industry. your taxes at work. So let's see, what have we got? We destroy our own environment, we contribute to climate change, we take food from the poor and use it to make the rich sick. And we subsidise this with hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer funds. Well, that's just great. Look, there are some people who support this issue. This is what they say. They don't feel pain like we do. They don't think like we do. We mustn't be sentimental, which means they're going to do something cruel. We must be realistic. They're going to make money out of it. It will ruin the economy, and anyway, somebody else will just do it instead of us. Oh, actually, they were the reasons for not entering human slavery. These were the very same reasons for opposing giving the vote to women. None of it makes much sense. Even if there were real profits, which there aren't, even if we don't care about destroying our own environment, which we very much do, even if we don't care about real progress in these foreign countries, which we do, we oppose live export because it is morally wrong. And adding subsidies from the government does not make it right. On behalf of the victims of live export, the cattle living and eating in a layer of their own faeces, tendons slashed at, throats hacked at, stabbed in the eyes, made to watch their friends killed and butchered ahead of them. The sheep terrorised, abused, burnt, butchered and sometimes buried alive. I want to say sorry. I am so sorry. We do not want this to continue, and we are trying. On behalf of the victims of live export of the past, of this very day and of tomorrow, let's take a minute to stand in silence and think about their suffering. A minute's silence. Thank you. I've come to the second part of what I want to talk about today. I said I'd talk about two things. How do we achieve together a ban on live export? The decisions about live export are made by politicians. Actually, it's worse than that. They're made by the major political parties. Major political parties don't care that you're here today. Major political parties don't care if live export is immoral. The only thing that major political parties care about is power and money. Their power and their money comes from the ballot box. If we want them to change in response to our wishes, we must affect them at the ballot box. I say vote them out. What we want in Parliament is people who do know that cruelty to animals is always wrong. People who care enough to take action. Like you. You're the people who know that. You're the people taking action. I want you standing in the Parliament. Why aren't you in there? You're the kind of people we need in the Parliament. You seem to know right from wrong. Join us and stand up for animals. This September, the Animal Justice Party will be standing Senate candidates all around Australia. This September, we have the opportunity to tell the major political parties exactly what we think of them and what we think of live export. This September, the Senate election is a referendum on live export. I'll say that again. This September 14, the Senate election is a referendum on live export. If you wanted to continue with all the cruelty and suffering that entails, fine, vote for the current government. If you want the industry expanded with an apology to Indonesia, not the animals, and a great deal more cruelty and suffering, vote for the Liberal Party under Tony Abbott. But if you want to ban on live export once and for all, I urge you, I implore you, give your vote to the animals. Give your vote to the animals and give them a voice inside the Parliament. Give your vote to the animals because it is time for this injustice to end. Give your vote to the animals and let us finally ban live export. 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 Ban live exports. Ban live exports. And I think we're marching to Parliament.
People of Melbourne who care about animals and who know the way to win this is through politics. We will win this, we will ban live export.